Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. I am so excited to have an amazing speaker for you today. You're going to love her. She is a wealth of information. I've known her for many, many years. We've worked but with different cases, difficult cases. This woman is a lifesaver. When you are in trouble, she comes to rescue, and she is amazing at what she does. Shanna Welsh-Levin, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for coming here today and sharing with us your wealth of knowledge and telling us all about landlord-tenant laws and all the changes and everything. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here and such an honor. You're always so kind with your words and saying such nice things. We really try to do our best for our landlord clients. So I really appreciate being here, and hopefully I'll have some good information to share.
I am sure you will. So tell us a little bit about your business and what area of law you cover.
So I have always practiced real estate law in San Diego County and Southern California. So my business name is SoCal Realty Law. We cover all of Southern California, but we're located here in San Diego County. And I've only ever practiced real estate law. And about a third of what we do are landlord services. That includes evictions, serving notices to tenants, serving notices that change the terms of leases, and then also within landlord services, we prepare leases for landlords. We handle mostly residential, but we can also handle commercial property evictions, commercial property leases, in addition to the residential stuff. All the residential stuff keeps us really, really busy, but we cover the whole range of it. And then in addition to that, my office provides litigation services for real estate matters. So that would be like quiet title disputes, non-disclosure disputes, like when you buy a property and you think that somebody hasn't disclosed. We handle some HOA disputes, and then we do some property transactions as well.
Great. Okay. So since we are I have to say it's so valuable that you provide landlord services, because there's not that many attorneys that provide that service. So when somebody is in a bind and is looking for that type of service, it really is hard to find, especially somebody who's as attentive as you are with your clients.
Well, thank you. We do focus solely on landlord services because in California, it's a very tenant friendly state. And we feel at SoCal Realty Law, we feel that landlords deserve rights as well. And to the extent that landlords do have rights, we make sure that we protect the landlords and use their rights, to do the best job for them. Um, it it helped my practice that in 2020, when they did the rent cap and just cause law, the California Tenant Protection Act, I thought that was going to be difficult. I started doing continuing education for other lawyers, and then COVID happened, and all the landlord and tenant laws started to change and just continued to change for years beyond that. They finally kind of stopped changing, and except they haven't, because I have a list of new laws for 2025. So it really helped my practice to start doing monthly webinars and talking to the clients and presenting that information, because it keeps me up to date, and then I like to share that. But it took a lot of other attorneys out of this area of practice because it was just so hard to keep track of all of it. So we've done a good job of staying up to date, and I have other attorneys in my office who I train and help them stay up to date as well.
So that is a very good point, because I've also done property management for a number of years. But once COVID hit, it became excessively more difficult to keep up with the laws. And I felt like without an attorney on my side, I really could not advise our clients to what was best for them. And now after COVID and after all the laws that have come into effect since then, I feel like as a property manager, it's almost impossible to know what to do and not to get in trouble with the law without the help of a knowledgeable landlord attorney.
Roxanne, you're so smart. I mean, you run your business and you do such a great job of managing your agents and making sure that they're doing the right things. And you practice it in real estate in multiple areas. You do sales and you do property management. So I think that it's a real testament to you and your business and how intelligent you are that you know that. You see that there's a line that shouldn't be crossed, that there's a point where you need an attorney. And there are many agents and brokers out there who don't see that line and they don't have somebody available to them. So, one of the things that I offer is a free 15-minute call. If somebody needs help and you don't know where to go, even tenants, we still give them appropriate referrals to tenant advocates. But, for brokers, for agents, and really any landlord, any property investor, we'll do a free 15-minute call. So at least they know that they can call us and then we can provide them with guidance and provide them with a referral. It is really important to have the resources.
Right. So let's get into the nitty gritty. What do we have to be aware of in 2024? And what do we have to look forward to in 2025?
Yeah, 2024 brought a lot of changes to landlord laws. And it goes back into 2023 and prior. But what we are really focusing on a lot with our landlords is they're coming to us and they're not in compliance with the law. If you have a property anywhere in California, there is a rent cap just cause addendum that needs to be in your lease, as well as a bunch of other addenda. And a lot of landlords come in and they're not in compliance yet. And then we have the city of San Diego, the city of Chula Vista, Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, and lots of other places, Costa Mesa. We have a list that we use that we cross-reference anytime a landlord comes in to make sure, first thing we check for is that they are in compliance with the state laws and the local laws that apply to them. And in state of California, in city of San Diego, in Chula Vista, which are the main ones that come in my door, there are relocation assistance requirements. There are disclosures that need to be made to the tenants. You can claim exemptions that might protect the landlord from having to pay relocation assistance. And so sometimes the strategy for the landlord is to get them into compliance, to claim exemptions, which will make the eviction, if we need to do an eviction, easier and less expensive because we can help them avoid paying the relocation assistance. So those are for the single family residences, investors who own just one unit or maybe one unit with an ADU or a duplex and they live in one side. So those mom and pop type of properties. So the first thing that we're really focusing on is making sure that the landlord is in compliance. In the city of San Diego, if you're not in compliance with the local ordinance, you cannot win an eviction. So you cannot get the tenant out. Now, many tenants don't respond to the lawsuit. They don't raise their defense. They don't hire an attorney. And so we get lucky. If the landlord chooses not to come into compliance before we do the eviction, then maybe we'll get lucky. But we usually insist to bring them into compliance first.
So on this note, I am on the side of landlords. Not entirely, but I feel like there's a lot of investors, and when we're talking about investors, we're not talking about big time investors. We're talking about mom and pops whose basically retirement is tied to a rental property. For example, I've worked with a lot of teachers, a lot of firefighters, a lot of people that are in public service, and whose retirement is not necessarily sufficient to to give them a comfortable retirement. Therefore, they try to supplement by having a rental property to supplement their income. And I feel like the laws that we have had come into effect past COVID are pretty much burdensome on those type of investors. What's your feel about that, and how to protect mom and pop investors, small time investors that own property or choose to own property or decide to move forward buying property for that purpose without getting hurt by the laws that are either in place or are coming even further to be more restrictive on the landlords. And how do we
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah. So one of the challenges with those investors is that even though they might not want to be landlords anymore, because they would suffer a huge capital gains tax to sell the property, selling the property really isn't an option, so they have to stay a landlord. One of the best recommendations is a good property management company. So if they have a good property management company, ideally that property manager will be screening tenants thoroughly, making sure that a full application is obtained, including a credit report, checking references, actually calling the references and talking to them, making sure they exist, um, looking at financials if possible. I think that the best way for a landlord to protect themselves from having problem tenants is before the tenant moves in, checking them out thoroughly before the tenant moves in. And if they are not interested in doing that themselves, then they need a professional to do it for them. Another way to help landlords become more informed if they don't want to hire a property management company is to have them suggest that they join the California Apartment Association or one of the other landlord associations that provides forms, webinars, information on their websites. I always use the California Apartment Association website to get information because it's always updated. They have lots of good information on there.
What's your feeling about the law that changed? Because my understanding was the security deposit, you could charge 2 months worth of security deposit. And since, was it July of last year? I was reading your articles, but which thank you for providing those articles to inform the rest of us. That has since July has been reduced to 1 month. Can you speak a little bit to the security deposit laws and updates?
This one was a surprise. I was very, very surprised that the state of California had reduced the rights of the landlords to charge a full security deposit. Because in my opinion, even 2 months oftentimes doesn't cover all the damage and the unpaid rent that the landlord suffers.
Yes.
So the law was changed to say that a landlord may charge only 1 month of rent, 1 month, the equivalent of 1 month of rent as a security deposit. There are exceptions to that rule. So a single family, actually, no, the exception to the rule is that the landlord who owns 4 or fewer units in the state of California, and that's another ambiguity in the law, is that I've had the question. Well, let me finish stating the rule. The rule is that if they own 4 or fewer units, then they may charge 2 months equivalent of rent for the security deposit. They cannot charge more than 1 month for a military service member, active duty military. But for anybody else, you can do 2 months if you do not own more than 4 units. Now, the question is, what if I own 2 units in California and 2 units in Nevada? Does that count? So my interpretation of the statute, which was not well written and is very ambiguous, is that it just applies to properties in California.
Mm.
So, and here's why people should consult an attorney because it's a little bit hard to read and understand all of these new laws. They haven't been tested in the court. And so there's a discussion that we have about, well, here's the risk. We talk to the landlord, here's the risk. We can interpret it this way. This is in your favor. You can act on this interpretation. But hey, if somebody wants to challenge that, you might be the test case that has to go to, to the court for a decision on that. Yeah. And that's tough.
So now let me ask you, because this often comes up, and potential clients ask, if I manage the property myself, I am not subject to these rules. But if I hire a property manager, now I'm subject to these rules.
That is not the case. Hiring a property manager doesn't change your legal requirements, your legal obligations. Hiring a property manager only helps you meet your legal obligations because the property manager should be aware or should have legal counsel helping them to navigate all of the pitfalls. Hiring a property manager, just because that property manager manages lots and lots of properties, that does not change the landlord's status as being an investor in only one single family residence. So the law still applies to the landlord based on how many properties the landlord owns and the nature of the property that the landlord owns.
Let's also talk about some of the nightmare stories that at least I know I have seen out of this. I had a situation where my potential clients were both teachers, and they had gotten a sabbatical, which is very common in the teaching field, where you get a sabbatical. So rather than having their property be sitting empty, they decided to have a tenant move in for that 1 year sabbatical. And then when they came back, they could not move back into their property without having to pay the tenant the just cause of 2 months worth of rent for the tenant to move out. That was the story that I dealt with. What's your recommendation in a situation like that, or what are some of the safeguards that can be set up? I'm not going to go into how unfair that is for a small landlord that that is not an institution making lots and lots of money. In a situation like this is really, the burden is on the landlord, in my opinion, rather than on the tenant.
Yeah. And the situation you described, honestly, that's mild in comparison to some of the situations we've seen and handled over the last 4 or 5 years. And I've been practicing in this area of law for 20 years now. As of this month, I've been an attorney for 20 years in California, and I've always practiced real estate law. But in the last 4 years, it's been more than I've ever had to handle, as far as particularly with the evictions, just having to constantly update my knowledge of what's going on. So in the situation that you just described, the first thing I would look at is how many units are on that property. Because if this was a condo or a single family residence, the first thing I would do is bring them into compliance by claiming exemptions to the relocation assistance rules. And that may take an extra 30 days and it also depends on the lease and whether the lease still has a remaining term or whether they're on month to month, because you can't change the terms of the lease. You can't claim the exemption in the middle of the lease term. You have to wait until it's month to month because it is a material change to the lease itself.
Yes, right.
Depending on all of these factors, the first thing that I would try to do is claim the exemption so that they would not have to pay the relocation assistance. But if they do, it's probably cheaper than an eviction. And it's definitely cheaper than trying an eviction when you're not in compliance and having to pay the extra fees of what a tenant advocate is going to charge to try to settle that and get them out of the property. So, you know, I mean, each case is its own unique snowflake, and we try to handle them as quickly and efficiently as possible and with, you know, the lowest cost. But there are a lot of factors that we can't control, such as whether the tenant is going to fight, you know, it's going to try to buy time by blocking the eviction, raising all the non-compliance issues just to buy themselves more time in the property, potentially without paying rent, right? Because, you know, you can't make them pay the rent while you're evicting them. So usually the landlord goes months and months through the eviction process without receiving any rent. And if that security deposit doesn't cover it, then the landlord's just going to be out of pocket.
So that being said, do you see anything changes? Do you see the pendulum changing in favor of the you know, the landlords that really don't have the resources to go through all these burdens in 2025 or beyond?
Unfortunately, all the changes that we've seen have been in favor of tenants. And that seems to be the pattern in California for many, many years back, even prior to 2020. So I don't see the pendulum swinging in favor of landlords. What has swung in favor of landlords is that because housing is at a premium in California, landlords can continue to charge higher and higher rent. And one very big win for landlords in this election cycle was that Prop 33 did not pass. Prop 33, and in many attempts prior to this year, they tried to undo the Costa-Hawkins Act, which protects landlords by allowing landlords to increase the rent when your property becomes vacant. Right. You know, there is no limit. It's not allowed in California for a local government to put a cap on how much you can raise the rent when your property becomes vacant. When it's vacant, you can raise the rent to fair market value, as long as it's not like some kind of emergency going on. There are some exceptions to that statement, but if Costa-Hawkins is repealed, then it would make my business very, very busy because there would be a lot more compliance issues for landlords. There would be, you know, these caps. And so my point is, because that's all a very complicated issue, but my point is that because Prop 33 didn't pass, that was a big win for landlords.
Right, exactly. Which being a landlord advocate, I would say that was good. And I think at least in the city of San Diego, we have plenty of rental units available. I would say I understand that the city that within the state we may have shortage of housing, but I believe in the city of San Diego we are well stocked. And I don't know, what's your opinion on that?
I think that's debatable because I think economists have like a number that's a general rule for, with this many people, you need to have this many vacancies to be well stocked, as you put it. I think the stock is low, even though there are vacancies, and that is what causes the increase in rent. So, landlords know that they can charge more money for rent because you see the rents going up and you can find tenants to pay it. At the point where there's enough housing, then you'll see that it's harder to find tenants who will pay what the landlords want to charge. And at that point, maybe the rents would come down. I'm not an economist, but in general, that's my understanding, is that there isn't enough vacancy stock. And that's why rents keep going up. They predicted that in San Diego County alone, we would hit, I think, a record increase in. I need to look at the article, but there was an article where they had done some sort of economic study, and they were predicting that our rents would go up more than like any place else in the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Shanna, thank you so much for joining us and for your valuable insight. Really, really appreciate that. And audience, if you are trying to get a hold of Shanna, Shanna practices law at SoCal Realty Law, and she is primarily a landlord attorney. You can get a hold of her via email, or you can also go to her website at socalrealtylaw.com. She is also a wealth of information on Instagram, so you can also follow her and get updates on her amazing videos and articles that she posts there as well. And if you are on YouTube watching this, we appreciate it if you give us the 2 thumbs up. We always appreciate your comments. And also, if you can click and subscribe to our channel, you can get updates as we make new videos. And if you are thinking of buying or selling real estate here in San Diego or anywhere in the U.S., there is my phone number. You can also email me, or like Shanna, I also like to be on Instagram, and there's my Instagram handle. So thank you very much, Shanna, for joining us. We really appreciate you, and keep up the good work, defending landlords and taking care of all the issues that come up with real estate.
Thank you, Roxanne. We will. And you keep selling that real estate and doing a great job for your clients. I know you always do.
Thank you so much.